Why shouldn't we have an 8-team playoff by now? Is this the year that everything falls apart and the stars align, where all those chefs in the kitchen decide to finally get together and make the same meal, and the meal is an 8-team playoff? I'll start with Al. My first thought is that 2020 obviously is the year of all years to ruin college football. Thankfully, it didn't ruin college football. We made it. We made it. We're now in the postseason. We got a lot of problems, though. And that first thing is, for me, that there are undefeated teams that don't even have a chance to win into. So you are now showing your hand and saying, I don't care how many games you play. I don't care if you play twice as many games, because Coastal Carolina has now played twice as many games as Ohio State. So now we're saying, I don't care if you're playing twice as many games and you're still undefeated, you're not getting in. So to me, this proves it. There is absolutely no way a group of 5 team can ever win in. And that means it's flawed. They cannot be undefeated. They cannot be double the games and undefeated. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that the thing about the amount of games played, we've got a bigger problem. Before, when it was just 1 or 2 games here or there that maybe were missed, or maybe one team scheduled 10, another team scheduled 11, not that big a deal. But now we've got a huge problem where we have a situation where a team has only played 6. And that is unfair. And they've only played 6 and had weeks off in between each. Yeah. And so they've been very, very untested, one, for them, bad for them, but also not gone through the gauntlet of a 11-game, 10-game season. And that is unfair. That is unfair. And they've also jumped these teams. Not only have they jumped undefeated teams, Al, but they've jumped teams that are conference champions that have 2 losses. Yes, Oklahoma, but still, Oklahoma could not win their way back in it. And Ohio State seemed to not be able to do anything wrong other than maybe lose a game, but they weren't going to do that because they weren't only going to play 6. But what do you think? So is this the year of all years that we need to have that 8-team playoff finally be made and fleshed out?
Well, look, here's the thing. I have to say this with a couple of things in mind, a couple of stipulations, we'll say. All right. I'm agreement with Bill Lanham on Four Paws, okay? He's in over on Facebook, says the 4-game college football playoff has worked out well for Clemson. Be careful what you wish for. And he's 100% correct, okay? As long as Clemson dominates the ACC, they're going to be in the playoff, just like they have been. Now, I was a big proponent of expanding the playoff when they started the playoff. I wanted it 8 teams. I was even a fan of 16 teams. Now, I've kind of backed off the 16-team thing. I think 8 teams is a little bit better. And giving those teams some chance. Maybe you take the conference champion from all 5 and then three at large, or whatever you want to do. And, you put some stipulations on it. If your conference championship team has 4 losses, you don't let them in. There's got to be some what ifs that go along with it. But I'm okay with an 8-team playoff. Right now, I love the 4-team playoff because Clemson is in it every year. And again, we talk about this on the show. I like the path of least resistance to the national championship. And without having to play one more quality team, the 4-team playoff is the path of least resistance. So I'm good with a 4-team playoff, but I would not be sad to see 8. I think it would provide some real good games. And I mean, look, more college football is always a good thing. And again, I think Clemson will step up to the plate just like they always seem to when the lights shine on them the brightest. So I'm okay with an 8-team playoff, but again, I understand that it could be detrimental in some ways to Clemson, making their path just a little bit harder to get to the national championship.
Yeah, so when it comes to this, if you've read SouthlandClub.com and read a couple of my first articles, you know that I am a huge proponent of less bowl games and more playoff games. So make the playoff as large as you want. I don't care. 16, 32, whatever. I don't care. I'd rather that happen because it's a better product at the end of the season. I don't think this cheapens the regular season at all. It makes a better product for the postseason. 8 teams, I think, should be our baseline. And I understand the path of least resistance. But I think if Clemson continues to dominate and ends up as a top 2 seed every year, well, your path of least resistance, you're playing a team that you should be able to beat, hypothetically. You also look at the situations that excuse me. You also look at the situations this year with a few teams that I feel like are deserving to at least get a crack this year. They may not win it. I think Clemson and Alabama are the cream of the crop to do it. But to say objectively that Ohio State and Notre Dame are number 3 and 4, and not looking at an opportunity to say give Florida, who took Alabama to the wire, who scored 46 points, and if they had gotten an onside kick or had 2 extra minutes, it got real interesting. Texas A&M, who despite getting blown out at the beginning of the season, has taken care of business. They've taken care of business. Yeah. They've suffocated every team they've played. They played really well. They may not be the flashiest team, but I think they could have a shot at being a deserving team. Cincinnati, now they've got hurt by COVID issues and also not being a Power 5 team. But I think if you had a structure of 5 conference champions and a Power 5 team and 2 wild card teams, Cincinnati could make some noise. I think Cincinnati could hang with a Notre Dame or Ohio State, no doubt. Would they win? I don't know. But their defense is pretty daggum salty this year. And then, of course, I feel like a team out of the Big 12, either Iowa State or an Oklahoma. Oklahoma's hot right now. They're playing really well on defense. Their offense has always been good. So I think an Oklahoma-Ohio State matchup would be really interesting to watch, given that they're both, to me, similar teams. And I think Oklahoma would be peaking right now if they were to play.
Yeah, and I think that when I posted this online, somebody said, well, I don't really necessarily like that because, you're going to get a bunch of SEC teams in if you take this year, for example. So if you get the top 8, you got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4 in the top 8 right now. Well, I'm not necessarily saying that that's the right way of doing it, because I've seen different ways of going around an 8 team where you obviously put in your 5 Power 5 winners, so you got to win your conference to get in. That's the first thing, which I believe, Alan, Clemson will still have a great opportunity to do that every single year. So there's 5 right there, and it makes college football national. It forces it to be more national and get these teams involved. If they don't ever feel like they're not going to be involved, then they're never going to get better. I mean, you're not going to ever see this college football as a whole grow. And I want to see it grow. I want to see it become amazing and Clemson be national all over everywhere, because it's still college football. Now you say Clemson, people know it, but the first time Clemson won a national championship, not everybody knows college football. So people do know NFL and the Super Bowl and things like that. I want to see college football get to that level. But I want to see other teams, especially undefeated teams, get chances. I want to see conference champions be able to still have their chance. And I want to see more football. Man, can you imagine if Clemson had to play, say, I think there was like a bracket up there. Clemson would play Northwestern, and then they would play, say, like Florida, and then they would probably play like, say, Ohio State, and then they would maybe play Alabama. I mean, who wouldn't want those last 4 games of the season? I mean, that would be an amazing slate of games. But you definitely can't do like the top 8 without having some stipulations like pick conference champions, then maybe 2 at large, and then maybe a Power 5, like your best group of 5 winner or best group of 5 record or something like that. I don't know. Do you think it would have to be something technical or specific like that, or would you just take the top 8 in the rankings?
Yeah, I personally think you got to have some stipulations in there. Like I said, I mean, you could have a 4-loss Pac-12 champion. We know what garbage the Pac-12 is. And I mean, nobody wants them in the playoff. They don't deserve to be in the playoff. That's nonsense. And I think you got to have some kind of rules there. I don't think you take the top 8 either, because again, then you're going to get 4 or 5 SEC teams every year, which is also garbage. So yeah, you got to have some stipulations to go by, in my opinion.
Which I think that Al says it in here, Houston. Sorry about that, but Al says they're playing too many games. Well, I think there needs to be a stipulation on conference games going back to don't allow teams to just play 6 games, but say, hey, everybody play 10 games. I don't care what 10 games you play, but play 10 games. I don't care what teams they are in your conference, but play 10 conference games and then move on to the playoffs after that. So you'll have an 11th game conference champion. And then you'll have the rest, which is like with an 8 team is 3 more games. So you're still at 14 games. I mean, you're still not any more or less games than you play now. Clemson went 15-0 or 14-1.
Time out here, Morgan. We're not factoring in the fact that you've got to factor in some non-conference games here. Yeah. You're not going to go to a 10-team conference only schedule.
No, I'm saying you do. You don't bother with it.
Then how are you going to play South Carolina?
You are
Like, I
very
even
wrong.
play South Carolina. That's
I
a
already
terrible
told
idea.
you. I already told you earlier in the
No,
year. I don't care about them.
That's a terrible idea.
You got to play South
100% terrible
Carolina,
idea.
and you got to play the other teams in the state to give them a little cash to keep them going
Exactly.
too.
Okay.
as well.
Okay. All right.
Good rapport, my friend.
Here's the deal. Here's the deal. You play 10. You play as many games as you want, but only 10 count towards your playoff. How about that?
That's still a terrible idea.
No.
Interesting.
Okay.
Here's
I'm throwing it out there.
Here's my argument. My speaking truth here to anyone listening. Okay, if anything is proven this year is that bowl games are cheap and nonsensical, and they're stagnated, and there's no reason that we should have bowl games anymore. All right, look at our team in the Midlands, the worst bowl team in the history of college athletics, 2-8. They got a bowl bid before a 9-2 Army team, and nobody's complaining down there. They want the experience, and they want the money, and they want the cash grab, and that should say something. I think at the end of the day, whether you like it or not, whether you think it's too many games, an 11-game to 12-game season where you play a 9-game conference schedule, okay? 9-game conference schedule. You play 1 to 2 non-conference big games and an FCS opponent, so you can give the money to your in-state teams. No more conference championship games, all right? None of that, all right? 2014 conference playoff. You have every conference title, all your 10 conferences. And look, it's not going to be 1 through 10 champions. Look, if Ball State wins the MAC, they're going to be a lower seed and let that be. But everybody gets a shot at the table to play like the FCS.
Like
People
the FCS,
don't want, here's the thing. Nobody wants to talk about that. The FCS does this year after year, and they put out a quality product.
Yeah.
And yet we're stuck in these stupid baseball rules of we can't change because of the bowl traditions in the Rose Bowl. You got to be able to change. 2014 playoff. Hear me out there.
I'm with you on that.
Are you, Morgan? Because it sounded like before you weren't. And I don't know if Morgan understands the goal of the show. But the goal of the show, we're trying to fool people into thinking we know what we talk about. Okay, we know what we're talking about. And when you throw out ridiculous ideas like that,
I just like throwing out ideas. I just like them.
No,
I mean, that's an
throw
idea.
Out good ideas. That's the idea. Throw out good ideas because this is terrible. Yeah, we have to play South Carolina. We got to play the other teams in the state and other teams like that. I mean, that's just kind of the way it goes. But yeah, look, more teams, more quality teams. I'm all for it. I mean, it's a lot of fun. If I'm open to suggestions, I'll be down with whatever as long as Clemson's doing what they do. They're going to be there, so it's all good with me.
Yeah, as long as the team in orange and white's there, I would appreciate that. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I do think they need to expand, but I also see John in chat over on YouTube saying that expansion is just going to cause the 10, 11, 12, 17, 18, 19 team to complain about not getting in or whatever. So, but I really would feel better. I would feel better with those teams complaining than like 5 and 6 complaining.
Right.
That to me just doesn't seem fair. Or 7 and 8 who are undefeated, complaining. That to me, I don't like to see for sure.